program called What's Going On FlintTalkRadio.com. I'm George Moss, the host of the program, and because this is not the fourth or the second Monday of the month, I'm here without my co-hostess, who's here on the second and fourth Mondays, and we will have her back when those two periods of time come up each month. I'm so glad to be here this afternoon to talk with you about a story that we all are concerned about, and that is these scandals that are breaking out all over the place in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. And this is what we do know, and not that which has not yet been discovered. So we're talking about the scandals that we now are aware of, not the ones that are still hidden underneath the surface. And we are going to discuss that this afternoon. And I'm going to also hopefully have a little bit of time to discuss an article I put on Facebook yesterday, after having said on Saturday that I was going to be doing a story on the assassination of Malcolm X and telling the real story that has yet to be told about what actually occurred in the Audubon Ballroom on February the 21st, 1965. And I wanted to uncover, as I think I did in that article I put on yesterday on the 88th birthday of Malcolm X, I think I did put out some things on that network that have yet to be discussed elsewhere, and I'm going to hopefully have some time to go into that as well. But we'll have to start out with the breaking news that we have, which has to do with the IRS is looking at and being flagged by people who had certain titles in his name. I don't think that Jihad is one of them. I don't think they were flagging you if you use words like Sharia law, but if you use words like patriot, 9/12, I don't know about truth. I don't know if that would have sent up any red flags, but certainly words like Tea Party. It is interesting when you think about those groups that were targeted, that anything that had to do with restricting government, which is what the Tea Party is doing, the 9/12 group, and patriots trying to do, which is to limit our government and get it back underneath the auspices of the Constitution. It's amazing that it is those groups that were being targeted by the IRS, which I think there should be another S put at the end of the acronym, the Internal Revenue Secret Service. There will be IRSS to make it more specific to what this group actually does. And I don't think anybody is really shocked that the IRS was being used for political purposes. I can say personally that I'm not shocked by it, because I've been the victim of the investigative arm of the IRS that is in fact intruding into spaces it has no right to be and making all kinds of outrageous claims that they paid the price for. In my case, you know, John, I was writing this on my Facebook wall. I think they know I'm not scared of them, so because I pay my taxes, and I pay more than what I'm supposed to pay, because I don't want them kicking my door down, because because if that happens, Houston, we got a problem. So so I make sure I send my check in there on time, pay a little bit more than what I'm really supposed to pay, just because I want my front door not kicked in by the Gestapo that I know this operation called the IRS actually represents. I'm not at all fooled by them. They're a fascist organization, and there's no sense in us lying about it. This pretended outrage and this pretended shock and surprise in Washington that the IRS was out of control. I would like to see a poll in the American population to find out how many people out here, maybe not in Washington, but how many out here in the blue and red states. It doesn't really matter whether you're not whether you're conservative or not, or a liberal or not. I would like to know who does not think that the IRS is out of control and being used for political purposes. But in my own personal case, I can attest to the fact that they're out of control and have been out of control for a number of years. They didn't just started with the latest scandal. And I was talking about my personal situation. I should say my most recent personal situation, because this has been going on for a while. But in the last case, what happened was that within a matter of about, 2 weeks, they sent me 2 different tax audits. I think it was in about a 2-week period of time. There's no coordination there. I just know this came out of the clear blue at the time of the election last year. It had nothing to do with anything. I hadn't paid my taxes, so they wanted to find out if they could hit me up for some tax in years that have long since passed. It wasn't like the year before I was being audited by. It was like 4 or 5 years ago. They thought I had thrown my records away, apparently. And one tax bill was for $14,000. And the other one, I think, as I said on my Facebook wall, it mattered to me having to just mail up my first child, my firstborn, because that one was even more prohibitive. And it was more, the one that was $14,000 would have been 40% of what I had made that year. So, I mean, it was like, I thought I was wondering if I moved to France. where I read this morning that in France, there were about 8,000 taxpayers where they were taxing them at more than 100% of the money that they made. Did you read about that, John, in France?
Yeah, I read about that.
8,000 people that are, in fact, taxed 100% of what they actually earn. That is called, what is that called? It's called government welfare, where the government is leeching on the public as if it's not already doing that through its tax
That's
policies.
all it does. That's all the government is nothing but a leech.
It's a leech in terms of what it does, but that is beyond what you expect the government to do. That's confiscating of everything that you've earned, which puts the government on welfare, and raise a question of why would anyone go out there that has a lick of sense, as they say, that would go out there and do anything to be productive if all is going to happen at the end of the day is that you are turned into a slave. I mean, I thought that's what the slaves did. You go out there in the field, and everything that's produced as far as the welfare in the field, you turn over to the slave owner, and he makes all the money. At least he gave you the meals and gave you a suit of clothes every year around Christmas time, pair of shoes. Don't wear them out.
Well, that's what the progressives really want to do. I mean, they want to be able. I think their goal is to be able to take your entire paycheck, give you a little pittance, maybe so you buy something for a Christmas gift, or if they allow Christmases in the future, and then they're going to take that and just give you. That's what they want. They want everybody working as good little bees for the state. They don't want you to have your own conception of yourself. They don't want you to develop yourself. They just want you to serve the collective. They're like the Borg on Star Trek. And if you know what that is, you got to watch those episodes. They're like the Borg. They don't want you to resist them.
Yeah, John, it's a mindset that I don't think the common person can understand these politicians. I think since most of us, I mean, we all have our abnormalities in certain areas and not in some of the other areas. So we are sane in some places, not quite as sane in some other areas. And I think that because we are not insane in terms of the lust for power, which is what the political arena is really about, people that get into it, they're not getting into it to do the common good. If they said to me, I think I'd probably haul off and smack and bust them one. If a politician tells me you're running for office because you want to do what Boehner said, serve the public, to give public service. Representative House Speaker Boehner, can you take that one back? I mean, roll that one back and put that back inside your mouth, because who believes that anymore? That you're up there in Washington with the rest of those, the gang. And I'm glad that you mentioned that there was a gang of 8. That was a smaller group of the gang of 535, because to talk about public service, I think that's just a stretch.
Every time I hear that, I roll my eyes like, you're not serving me. We're paying you this much, and when you leave office, besides when you usually decide not to run, or you finally got enough scandal you can't get reelected, they walk away with millions. They say well they do a speaking engagement stuff, but what it is, they just passed a law too. I don't know if you knew this. They just passed a law that allow them now to make it easier for these congressmen and senators to do insider trader information. Use the insider trading. They just made it easier for these people.
Sure, it's outlawed to Joe Blow citizen, but it's legal for the members of the Congress to do it. Because you know yourself that all they did was legitimate a practice already in place in the Congress. Because you call these people up, these business people up, and have them testify before the Congress, and you grill them until you get the information about where they plan on going with their businesses, and you throw your money over there, based upon what information you've actually collected as an overseer.
And you pass the law, so make sure they do exactly what you want to do, so you can benefit.
That's exactly what they're doing in the book that's written by Thomas De Lorenzo called "How Capitalism Saved America." Nobody wants to hear that. Socialism is going to save America. The government is going to save America. But De Lorenzo's book, where in the last chapter of that book, he goes into that in terms of how these politicians are using businesses as a purse string for their campaign and for the family vacations that they take, which is paid for by business. Because what you have to do in Washington, and we might as well be totally honest about it, is that you got to pay almost like you're paying the mafia for the right to do business in this country. That's what really these regulations are about. Either you pay to play, or they come after your businesses, and that's been proven through all kinds of things that are going on behind the scenes. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. But so anyway, the way that played out in my own personal case, one bill was for $14,000. Now I knew that with the taxes I paid that year, about 4 or 5 years before they actually audited me for that year, because they were trying to audit me in terms of the year before, and that's like, I laugh at that one because they know pretty much that when I'm audited, I'm going to federal court. I am not selling. I don't even go down there to the IRS. I'm not intimidated by these guys, and when I get before the court, they tell me, Mr. Wallace, you have to stand up. I'm still sitting down there because I don't really want to stand. You have to. Will you please stand up when you're talking to the court? I'm sitting down. Yeah, I stand up, and no problem. But I'm so outraged over the particulars of how things operate, and I'm trying to protest on behalf of a lot more folks than myself, because it's not just, I don't feel personally picked on. I understand what's going on with the IRS. It's an outlaw mafia, agency, and it's intended to be that way. And when I get to the end of this conversation today on the IRS investigation, I'm going to tell you why it's all intended that way. Because we have got to understand what it is we're dealing with and not be fooled by these tricks, these rabbits in the hat, pulled out of the hat trick by these magicians called politicians. Because nothing going on in Washington right now is serious. And I'll tell you what serious would look like before we leave this topic. But I took some notes. Let me make sure I finish up what I was saying, because I want to say so many things here. I ended up getting $500 back for the 1 year, the one where they were trying to access me, an additional. This was not that I didn't pay the taxes. This was an additional $14,000 on top of what I'd already paid. That would have amounted to, after having paid my 30 to 35%, they were now asking for another 40%. That's what it amounted to. So that I would have ended up paying 75%. 75% of my income in taxes. And I don't know anybody. I don't think that this guy that's always talking about want to pay more of his, want to pay more taxes, but fighting the government and paying the taxes that he owes. I don't think he would be paying 75% on the billions that he has. But I'm paying. They wanted me to pay that kind of money. I got $500 back for that one. And the one they sent me 2 weeks after that, which was the one that I think it was a year before, the one that I sold, they had sent me a check for $500 on. The other one was $400. I went out there and had porterhouse steak both times. I went out there and celebrated because I knew that they were in trouble when they sent me a tax bill. I make sure that I'm ahead of the curve ball because I know who they are and I know what they're looking for. They want to shut anyone down that dares rear his head or her head up above the maze. They want you quiet in this country. If you start talking about that First Amendment, you're going to get audited. Now, I'm not sure if you say jihad with I don't think that would raise a red flag.
If you talked about jihad, they'd probably come running to you and ask if you needed a military, you wanted a funding for it.
I think that'd be a tax abatement, wouldn't it?
They'd probably give taxpayer dollars to you because look what we just did to Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, I could use $250 million. Can you?
Hey, tell me about it. And in fact, I'll tell you how bad it is. They'll go borrow the money to give to them. They'll put the donkey on the future's back to pay for it. These Democrats I'm talking about. generation unborn, they go and borrow money in their name to give it if you have those kinds of words in your name. But if you get the word patriot in your name and you mention the Constitution in your site, and I want to say this about Facebook. You guys have backed off a lot since the election. I typed yesterday, and I'm going to get to this later on, but I just want to say this now that we're talking about these scandals. Because Facebook, you have not been targeted yet with the scandal you were involved in. We know that the IRS was involved in trying to swing the last election. I mean, this auditing went on, this holding person's request in abeyance for 2 years, 2 and 3 years, 2 election cycles was not by accident. But Facebook, you played a role in that also. Because I know what you stopped doing is that you have stopped, I typed a 7-page article out on Facebook yesterday, and lo and behold, that took about 2 hours, and so I typed 7 pages, and none of that was erased. During the campaign, in 2012, up until November the 6th, I would be typing on that screen. I don't care how short my articles were. If it was 1 page, it was a half a page. All of a sudden, I'm typing at this speed, and something takes over and is reading what I'm typing. It is typing. I'm typing at this speed and it's going at that rate. Somebody took over the controls, and before I knew it, whoof, it goes off the screen. And it did that repeatedly. When I was so determined not to be deterred in posting. Sometimes I would take that stuff over about 4 times because I knew what they were doing behind the scenes. But what I noticed? Facebook, this is for you. Because the election is over, I typed 7 pages yesterday. I counted the number of pages. 7. I started at a certain time and went for what I think was 2 hours. It might have been a little bit more. And no problem. No one came in. No one interfered. There was none of that. It was going on consistently in 2012, but I can type anything I want to. Now, nothing's erased, nothing's removed. Everybody's happy. I should say, today is Monday. That's a song. So I know that this was in fact a culture of corruption, and one of its arms was in fact the IRS. But I would be remiss in my responsibility to the public to report what's going on by saying that that's where it ends and that's where it starts, that's where it ends, because that would not be true. Too many different episodes of it. And really, the fact of the matter is, let me go to what I did some notes on, because I want to talk from my notes and put this into context for you, because I taped they had the hearing on Fox Network for the hour that it was in fact aired last Friday, during the time they had Stephen Miller, that was testifying before the House Ways and Means Committee, the House Ways and Means Committee, that is chaired by Representative Dave Kemp, who is a Republican of Ohio. And it was really interesting just to watch the interaction between the Republicans on the committee and the Democrats on the committee. When Dave Kemp came out with his preliminary statements about what the committee is going to be doing and their purpose in sitting in hearing of the IRS from the acting commissioner who took over from Schuman, who is Stephen Miller, who will be stepping down. He was, quote unquote, forced to step down, or he's going to retire anyway next month after having 25 years in there. And they did the same thing to Schuman, slapped him on his wrist and then let him walk away rather than firing him, and then taking his pension away from him. Let these persons walk away, and then they can just go into retirement and continue to pull from the taxpayers' purse strings. So that is no penalty there. But when Dave Kemp made his comments about how outrageous this behavior was, and was trying to attach it to the White House, well, the Democrats in the committee understand the implications if that is what is going to happen in this committee. So after Dave Kemp, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, made his opening remarks, the next person to speak was Senator Levin. you know him, the Democrat from Michigan, who was not even aware these violations were going on. So I don't know if they're still in rivalry. He maybe should have talked to his brother. Hey, John, maybe you should have talked to Carl Levin, Senator Carl Levin.
You don't want them talking because they'll just find ways of screwing us over. You don't want them talking because big brother brother Carl is more connected than and so he will tell them how to screw us over more. So.
Yeah. He was saying that he was totally unaware of the abuse of the IRS, and they all want to get to the bottom of it. When the fact is that his brother was one of the ones that was in 2010. That wrote to the IRS asking them to investigate the very groups that are being investigated. And the reason for that was because they were horrified after before and after the 2010 election, where 25% of the Democrats went home. I mean, that was a shakeup in 2010, and where the Democrats had control of both the House and the Senate. After that election was over, they held on to the Senate by 4 or 5 seats, but they lost control of the House, and the question was how much of a ripple effect would that have for the year 2012, up to and including the president. That was a concern they had. So Senator Levin, the Democrat from this state, was surprised. I think he should have talked to his brother, who Merciless is stepping down, by the way, is in November. And that would be, hopefully, would have some coattails on it. We always talk about the president having some coattails. They can bring some folks in with him on his party. We never talk about the coattails in terms of people going out. Can we get some coattails? We understand the coattails are putting people in. We need, this is the most special here. This is a news alert. We need some coattails for those that are leaving. Everybody, when you come in the office, we're going to ask the question, did the president have coattails, which means did he pull anyone else in with him? He's so popular and he ran so well in strong campaign that he pulled other folks into the public square to do, don't get this wrong, public service. Well, you know what I like to see? I like to see an exit strategy. And the exit strategy would be, do these persons, when they leave, this is you, Carl Levin, can you carry any of those guys with you? I mean, look, we got to have some of y'all have some coattails on the exit lane. You're at the entry, you have people coming in, you pulling folks in with you. That's not nearly as important as the ones you carry out when you leave. So the president's only able to serve 8 years, or if he serves another 2 years of another president's term, he can serve 10 years. Well, after that period is over, whether it's 4 years, 8 years, or 10 years, after that time is over, can those persons have some coattails at the end of the process, and those that were doing this in? They got a thing they do in Nigeria. When I was in Nigeria, I was over there when they had Obasanjo was president, and he had come back. He was a military person in the 1970s. And he ran through, he was running Nigeria through military means, but after they had to then put some face on the country's quote-unquote democracy, nothing to see there. They then had democratic elections where they do what they do here. They have you go to the polls and vote, then they steal the election. And what Obasanjo was doing was, you can't put the politicians in jail while they're serving. So as soon as they stepped down or they were defeated at the polls, then he put them in jail. Because he knew that when you get elected, you're out there doing public service. You're up there feeding the kitty. The kitty is your pocket. And once they stepped down, then he put them in jail. You didn't even have to ask, did you steal? Did you lie? Did you take money that was out of the public coffers? To ask those questions of a politician, I think, is a waste of your time. You need to understand that they're up there enriching themselves, and this idea of them giving public service in the political arena. Can anyone please, there's a number there, can you please call us at 208-1854 and tell us where they're at, because excuse my French, we ain't seen them. And I haven't seen them in this lifetime.
Where's all the sacrifice too they're supposed to be making for us? I mean, all this. They always, like, every time someone of them that croaks in office or something, years of public dedication to service and sacrifice for the country. What the hell they sacrifice?
They're sacrificing us. I mean, the American people are the sacrificial lambs. They're not sacrificing anything for themselves. When I saw that one poll that showed that 1% of the American people are millionaires. Now, I'm a millionaire in terms of how much money I would make in my lifetime. I never had $1 million at a time, but I think over the period of my whole career, by the time I get through working and all of that, I would have had $1 million passed through my arm before it was grabbed by the IRS and put in their coffers. But now, I don't have. I'm not going to have $1 million in the bank or anything like that. Anywhere close to it. But when you say that there are 1% of the American people, the millionaires, you're saying that 1% of 300 and approximately 10 million people, of that number in the population, 1% of them have been able to accumulate $1 million or more. That's that. Okay, so I celebrate that with them. I'm glad that there are people that are able to be productive enough to have made that kind of money, because you can't do that, particularly in the business world. You can do it in the public sector by just putting money in your pocket that doesn't belong to you. But in the business world, where you have to produce a product, you can't become a millionaire unless you are, in fact, satisfying customers and convincing people to do business with you. So I celebrate that, because I know that by you becoming a millionaire, you have to do it by servicing the public good. You can't do it otherwise unless you got a gun, and you're not using a gun on anybody in business. You're not making me go to the restaurant I was at last night where I was eating. I had prime rib, I must say, which is pretty good. I won't tell you the restaurant until they start advertising with us here at FentonTalkRadio.com. But if you're out there, I was out there in Fenton at that restaurant out there, and I had a pretty good meal. And they have the best bread in town. But I won't mention your name until you, start understanding that we're advertising your place only when you, in fact, come aboard the advertising arena. There are no freebies here. But nobody forced me out there. I could have gone to another restaurant. I usually go where the coupons are. And if you want me to trade with you, you can't force me in there, so you have to give me a coupon. And I already got one cut out where buy one, get one 50% off. I'm not advertising you either, but I'll be there. That one kicks in on the 29th, I think the 29th and 30th. I'll be there one of those days, you can believe that. But there's no coercive power to force you in there. But 1% of the American people, out of the totality of the 310 million approximate people in the United States, and they cannot force you into giving them your money. They have to produce a product, and one that you are willing to pay for. It's not even the one that is best or more qualified out there. It's the one that convince you that you ought to do business with him other than doing business with John Doe. And I celebrate that with them, 1%. So I haven't done the math yet, but 1% of 310 million people, I'm sure there are mathematicians out there that can do that. But when you get to the Congress, which is made up of 535 members, how do you explain this one? That of that group, that gang, they said the gang of 8, so what about the gang of 535? That group, the mafia, the real mafia, the Mafia Incorporated, that's not incorporated, it's incorporated as Congress, those guys up there in Washington, of the 535 members, 50% of them are millionaires. Now go figure that out for me. How did that happen? Either we have, and there's no evidence of this, Either we have the smartest people on the planet. No, we have not just what we have. We have people in Congress that are smarter in terms of being able to make money 50 times the ability to do so and generate wealth in the general population than we have in Congress. That's one possibility now. Or it's this other thing, and that is we got people in Congress that are 50 times more likely to be doing things under the surface that we're not aware of. Otherwise, these are some geniuses up there. And those of you in the audience, let me ask you this question. Is there any evidence of that anywhere, on any level, of anything they're doing in Washington? And if not, I have to assume the worst, that this is not about having some kind of business acumen or some kind of skill that you have that you're hiding from us underneath the surface we can't detect, that allows you to do what the American people can't do. And that is having 50% of the people out here as wealthy as 50% of the people out in Congress. How did that happen? And they're not millionaires when they go to Congress. They become millionaires after that. Some of them have had other political jobs, and they made money in that arena. But I don't know of anybody that was a millionaire going to Congress in the business world. I'd like to see who those persons are that were in the business world, where you can make $1 million doing things that are, in fact, not inappropriate and have some propriety to it. And you didn't take it, so you earned it. Where are those persons that went there from a business background and were millionaires and now serving in Congress? No, these are lawyers, and we know what that's about. And these are people that had lower political offices when they ran. I like to see Nancy Pelosi's background. She came in, I think she was worth $7 million when she came in. I like to see what her background would be. And now she's worth, this is maybe an old number now, because this was stated last year in 2012. They were talking about she was worth $35 million, talking about trade of influence. What is that about? In terms of being able to invest money? These persons never losing the money. It's always about a gain and never any losses. We never hear about them losing the money, and that's because of inside trading, which they finally at least they legalize it. So the practice that was illegal before, but they were doing it anyway, at least now you pass a law to make it legal. I would prefer that. Rather than being outside the law, pass a law and make legal what you're doing. Like, taking our money with the IRS. I was watching Friday. I tape these things so I can stop it, play it again, Sam, so I don't miss anything. And I was playing it over and over again, and stopping to make sure I had picked up what they were saying and looking at the inner workings of the politics and things of that sort. I'll tell you what really was quite a Kodak moment was when they swore Stephen Miller in. He and the investigative general, they call him the IG, the one that sits over the IRS, making sure that they're not doing things that's inappropriate and outside of the pale of them collecting taxes. And this was the guy named J. Russell George, who was sworn in at the same time that they swore Stephen Miller in, the acting commissioner of the IRS. And it was just interesting when Steve Miller raised his hand to take the oath. When he got through swearing to tell the whole truth, his hand practically collapsed down to his side. It's like he had a ball, one of those ball and chains on his arm. When his arm fell, his arm went down to his side so fast. It's like there's a weight on his arm. He couldn't hardly hold his head up there, because he knew that they're going to grill him, and he got to have some real creative ways of getting around giving an answer that doesn't exculpate the testimony without lying to Congress. I mean, you got to finesse, Because you call him a lie before Congress and you're lying to Congress, that could be really a serious, that's a felony.
I wonder if he got a phone call in from Bill Clinton to, advise him how to do that.
I would think those guys talk to each other. If I was involved in politics and I saw the lies these guys are telling to get away with it, I want to call them and say, how did you do that? I like to know, what's the formula that you use? Because some of these guys, should be out of there, and they survive it. I mean, by splitting hairs, I'm trying to define what is. I mean, the dictionary tells what is, but they have to define is. And so I would like to know, if I was in his shoes, I'd like to have known, those went before the House Ways and Means Committee, how did you survive it? Anyway, they swore him in, and he got there. This is Stephen Miller, and they asked him. The biggest question they asked, the most fortuitous question they asked to Stephen Miller was, did you think that pigeonholing these groups, now we're talking about all these conservative groups, into one package, and looking at their call for a tax-exempt status, do you think that you're putting them all into the same package and giving them extra scrutiny? Do you think that was, in fact, a violation of the IRS code? And Miller, don't forget his hands up there like it was on that anchor, and it was pulled down by the ball chain, said, while admitting that they did in fact pigeonhole these groups, did not think that they had done anything illegal, because guess why they did it? Because it made things more efficient. By putting them into this group right here with the undermanned, I guess that's a sequestration problem again, just didn't have enough people to look over all these forms, all these groups, with the manpower and woman power they had, so they had to put them in there to create greater efficiency. Now, nobody on the other side is so grouped, only on the conservative side, but that can be explained.
Yeah, didn't they do something like that in Germany about 70 years ago with certain ethnic groups within Germany?
Yeah, I think I read about that, John.
Together, and I don't usually like using the Nazi card, but I mean, that's the same justification the Nazis used. I mean, that is.
Yeah, I think there's some equivalency here in terms of where we're heading in this country. We don't get off this train. This train track is leading this train on that track, and if it's not leading straight to tyranny, it's leading there through a circuitous route, because we will get there if we in fact continue down this road. It may not get there directly by going straight down the road. It may take a couple of short detours and go around some of the curves and things like that. It may not be in a straight line. But if we continue down this path, there is no doubt in my mind where this is going to end up. And so that was some of the, I thought that was probably the most pivotal point made in the hearing. And I knew then we're not getting any answers from Steve Miller. And then not only 7-Eleven was concerned about turning this into a political theater. He was trying to say that we shouldn't turn this into a political matter. We shouldn't be playing politics with it. Well, that was kind of surprised. It wasn't surprised. That was kind of like amusing. That in the political arena, we're not going to make any political use of the hearing. That just didn't even sound right. That you're in a political arena, but you're not going to be playing politics. Well, anything in the political arena is about politics. But what that was about was Levin, and there were a few others. I think I wrote down a couple of other names, because Levin wasn't the only one. It was also Crowley, and it was also, and my writing is so bad, I was writing so fast, Kevin Brady, who is a Democrat from Texas. They didn't say where Crowley was from, but they were concerned about the politics of it. Let's just do the investigation, let the chips fall where they may. Let's not, in fact, turn this into a political theater. And what were they really saying? Let Moss help you with the interpretation of that. They were saying, let us not, in fact, use this against the Democratic Party in the upcoming election next year, in 2014, during the midterm election. We don't want to lose any more seats. So we are just as interested as you are, Republicans, in investigating this matter, and we are just as outraged as anyone else is. And the American people, we love you, and we just want you to know we're going to get to the bottom of this. That's both parties saying that. Because we're outraged over what we found here, and we don't endorse this, and blah, blah, blah. You know, it's kind of interesting when, who was the representative? And I think I wrote his name down too. It wasn't Charles Boothang, who is from Louisiana. He was Republican. There was another member. This was I think this was Brady. I think this is Brady. Brady was, because here's what Brady did. He asked Stephen Miller. Was it Miller he asked? Was he asking of J. Russell George? He asked of the Inspector General, the IG they call him, who is kind of independent of the IRS process. His job is to oversee what they're doing, and I think he did a credible job. I think he was pretty. He knew that he was not under the hammer. His job is to investigate any kind of fiduciary discrepancies in the IRS's behavior, and he has to do that because that's your job. And if you're not doing that job, then when people call your attention to it, we can see it. That's more glaring. So he's pretty much more under the spotlight and can be held accountable more so than those guys that can claim this low level and we didn't know anything about it and we're shocked as anyone else is. But it was Brady who asked J. Russell George, the IG, the investigator of the IRS, the one that oversees the IRS behavior, making sure they're not doing things untoward, as if the old agent's not doing that. I mean, you'd be doing investigation on everybody every day in every one of the agencies throughout the country. But he's supposed to oversee it, and that's what he was in fact doing. They asked him, Kevin Brady of Texas asked him, Inspector General, give him his title, Inspector General, who was the last commissioner appointed over the IRS? Well, the answer was, lo and behold, George Bush. And Mr. Brady wanted to know from Mr. George, the IG, and before him, there was Mark Everson. And who appointed him, Mr. George? The answer was, again, George Bush. And what was Brady doing? Representative Brady from Texas doing? He was trying to show that, yeah, these persons may have been off the mark a little bit, and yes, they were in fact targeting the Republicans, but they were actually appointed by this Republican Bush. So it's really Bush's fault. You know, when I started listening to the hearing, I was wondering, how are they going to be able to swing this around? Because it's been Bush's fault for 5 years. I think this may be the first time in history. I'm going to have to go and do the research on this. This is the first time somebody has left office, and they are still responsible 5 years later for everything that's going on. 5 years after they left office, we should have kept.
Pelosi tried to lay the blame of Benghazi on Bush.
We should have kept Bush in there. You know, we should have kept Bush in there for another term. Not that he was doing anything worth talking about, but it was going to be Bush's fault. And at least we can have a man sitting up there so we can hold him accountable. The man left office, and he's doing all these things here, and we can't get to him. I mean, this is laughable. And they don't take us seriously out here at all. Now, I said I was going to give you a test of whether or not they are taking us seriously out here in the American heartland. You know, they want us to make us believe that their interest goes beyond their nose, which is to say it goes beyond the boundary lines, the 10-mile boundary lines of Washington, D.C. They're so concerned about us out here. So it goes outside of the heartland. They are concerned the IRS is out of control. Okay, here's a test of their concern. And by the way, those of you who's going out here tomorrow, you're going to be demonstrating out here in front of all the IRS in the country, and you're going to be out there with these signs.
That's dangerous, so just take your pictures and they will attack you.
You're going to be on the next. Go out there, though. I wouldn't encourage you to go out there, and we're going to have to fight the power. But you know what? I'm not going to be out there, not because I'm afraid of the IRS. I don't have respect for them. They have respect for me, and they know who I am, and they know I know who we are. That's just the way it is. Yeah, I pay up so I can keep them off my back, but I'm not afraid of the IRS. They don't intimidate me.
You know, it's like the idea of we're the land of the free is ridiculous. We're the only country where one of the countries that we sat there and allowed the government to take our gold from us, prohibit us from drinking alcohol, take 30-some, 40-some% of our income into their different schemes, and they regulate every aspect of our lives. Yeah, we're the land of the free. This is a sickening statement, but I don't believe in that crap anymore.
No, I don't. No, the statement is ludicrous. And John, I am engaged in a lot of conversations with people all over the country. I never hear anyone saying anymore what we say quite a bit in this country. This is a free country, and I can do X, Y, and Z. I don't even hear the American people even saying that anymore. That shows you the lid is off of that nonsense.
Well, look at the idea. Okay, gay marriage. Okay, I'm not for or against it. I think the government should never have been involved in marriage in the first place. That's the thing. This is all like a red herring kind of argument. They should never have been involved in marriage as much as they shouldn't be involved as much as rearing the children or educating the children. And people just allow it to happen because they don't want to look like they're extremists by saying you have no business doing this. Mm-hmm. I don't care if I offend these assholes who wear suits. I mean, in D.C. I don't care if I do. Mm-hmm. You know what? They can go cry. I don't care. They should get out of my life. I don't want anything to do with them.
The government, really, if you look at the intentionalities in place that's found in our Constitution, the government has its hands full in terms of overseeing what each of the instruments of government is doing. That's what really all this time they're putting in terms of intruding into our lives. The government really was intended to watch over the other parts of government, not to be watching over what we're doing and intruding in our space. The whole check and balance system was designed to have this branch check on that branch, and these two check on the other one, and that one check on these two. That's what the intentions were. And if government was doing this job, it would be constrained and limited and of a size where it can in fact oversee what government is in fact doing. John, in the last 5 years, the government has grown, sit down for this one, the government has grown by 40% in the last 5 years. And they want to talk about paying your fair share. You can't pay for this government.
Okay, we're still paying their fair share of our, don't you care about your neighbors? They might starve to death if we don't take your tax dollars and give it to them. Okay, we'll allow for that. But all of these wars we're fighting in the countries, we're giving millions and millions of dollars to aid to other countries every damn day. All these people, what do we owe these other countries? I'd like to know where that figures into the equation.
We owe them to stay out of their business, and but we don't owe them our money. Which is not the politicians' money, is our money, and they're taking it from us and giving it to whom they want because they control the military apparatus of this country. I'm going to tell you about whether or not we can tell the litmus test to tell if they are serious. I already know they're not serious, but here's a litmus test to authenticate the invalidity of what they're doing, and that's just a given. They're not going to do it because this is all hot air campaigns run by these politicians in both parties, because both parties are corrupt. It's just that they're mad because this is targeted toward their constituents. But what they showed in that committee last Friday, if you watched it, was that there were groups targeted under Bush as well. The IRS was targeting. That's why I said last week when I wrote on this. I wrote about it on Saturday once I saw I got up that morning and I watched the tape. And I wrote about this on Saturday on Facebook, and I was saying that wherein the Democrat from Texas, Kevin Brady, was asking Steve Miller, who appointed let me get the names right, who appointed Mark Everson as the IRS commissioner, and who appointed Schumann, who was stepped down, and then Steve Miller stepped up in his position, who appointed him. When he said it was Bush, that didn't faze me, because you know what that means? It means that, okay, while Bush is president, they do Bush's bidding. And then when Bush steps down and Obama becomes president, they do the bidding of Barack Obama. And the reason for that is because, and listen to me close on this one, the reason why that happens is because the IRS commissioner's position is not tenured. It's not like the Supreme Court positions. So you don't have any insularity in that position for the tenure of your office. You are appointed. And by any appointment, you serve at the pleasure of the person that has appointment power. So, yeah, Bush appointed them, both Iverson, Everson, Mark Everson, and he appointed Stephen Miller, who took his place. Now he got to step down. But that's not the issue here. The issue is who is the office holder, because it being an appointed position with no tenure attached to it, they're going to do the bidding of the party that's in power.
They're a weapon that should never been forged. The IRS should never been created, because it's always. You go back to the origin, like during the Prohibition era, that's who brought down Al Capone. It was not the murderers and
That's
stuff
right.
he was responsible. It's because they didn't pay their fair share to the government. And that's absurd. A human life should be considered way more on the balance on what they owe government or whatever they think the people owe them.
Yep.
And another thing is, too, LBJ used to sick the IRS on people back during his term as president, because there's some
There's a
groups out in
history to it.
Texas were like, attacking him. And so he turned the IRS loose on them. It's not just Nixon that did it. Johnson did before Nixon did.
Yeah, and that brings me right to the heart of what I wanted to say this afternoon about the IRS, and that is this. There is a litmus test of whether or not they are serious. And they're not going to pass this test, because I know what they're not going to do. They're going to do this investigation. They're going to put a lid on it. They're going to quiet folks down. They have a hearing until people lose, have the ADD kick in, attention deficit disorder kick in, and they're going to go on to something else. They're not going to fix this problem. The litmus test is a very simple one. That is, abolish the IRS and go to a flat tax, which fixes not only the IRS problem, it fixes the political problem also. And here's how it fixes that. If you have everyone through a flat tax, let's say 10%, which is what Ben Carson was talking about when I went down to hear him down close to Detroit, which nobody from Detroit wanted to come and hear what he had to say, because he is a conservative, and they're down there in Democrat land, and he's a graduate of the Detroit school system. They had one student there to find out how he came out of Detroit school and became the gifted hands they became. Somebody even learned that down there in that school system, where they got 75% of the students dropping out of school. But he was saying that he would like to see 10%. If you make $1 billion, you pay 10% of that. You make $1 million, you pay $100,000, 10% of $1 million. You make $10, you pay $1. You know, it's a fair. Everyone would pay some taxes. The chance of that happening, watch my hand here. I'm going to raise a hand up. This is the chance. That's not a perfect circle, but it makes the point. I can't make that perfect, 360 degree. It has this chance of making it through the Congress. They're not going to pass that, because what you have there is everyone, 100% of the population, at some point in time, would have a fiduciary interest in the policy of the country. Nobody could be paid off not to be engaged in the political process. 100% of people are engaged. They don't want that. They want half the population at least totally unconcerned. And then you could then go and try to appeal to the rest of the base. Part of it Democrat, part of Republican, but it's divided because it's in two different shields, human shields, from the politicians being held accountable. So you divide the rest of it up. But what would happen if you have 100% of the people out there? So the litmus test is to abolish the IRS entirely as a corrupt agency that cannot be fixed, no matter who's in office, no matter what party's in power, it can't be fixed. You'll see it going out of control again like it did in the aftermath of Watergate. Because one of those charges being brought against Nixon, there were 3 charges going to be brought against him if he had not stepped down. And one of them was the abuse of the IRS by the Nixon administration. That happened 40 years ago. They act like they can't remember that, which was being done under Richard Nixon. And then before him, John was saying a few minutes ago, it happened under Lyndon Baines Johnson. And it happened under George Bush. It doesn't matter what party it is. The IRS can be used for political purposes because they are the ones that can most come at you if you raise your head up. They can't penalize you for free speech outside of an agency that does not have any way of coming at you. And how can they come at you with anyone else if you're not breaking the law? No, the only way they can come at you is through the IRS, and they use it for that purpose. There's not nothing. This is not chemistry there. There's nothing to see there. Well, we got to just get real here, and if they are real in Washington, which I doubt, then we will see the realness of what they're doing by whether or not this agency is allowed to stand after the hearings are over. But the hearings cannot be the end result of what we're dealing with to fix this problem. The IRS got to be abolished. Gentlemen, get into this other thing before we get off there. How much time do we have? Got 3 minutes. I did a piece on, I said I was going to do something on the 88th birthday of Malcolm X, which was yesterday. Malcolm X was born on the 19th of May in 1925. And what I wanted to do was something nobody else has done in terms of why Malcolm was, in fact, assassinated. And I don't think anyone has, those of you who are interested in this piece of history, should read my post because I don't think, and I don't have to think about it because I read all the books that's out there, including that bad book put out by this the late professor at Columbia University, a person who had to be mad to write that book that he wrote on Malcolm X, Manning Marable. I had lunch with Manning Marable. That was and I had to pay for it. I want to wake him up, and he's the late Manning Marable. I don't want to say anything about his being deceased. I do want to say something about his character, and I have to say this: I didn't find any there. And his book is a travesty in terms of what he wrote about Malcolm. That book is the most immoral, irresponsible book that I ever read. But he got a Pulitzer Prize because the people didn't know the information that he wrote about, so they thought it was some candor that he came up with. Had Malcolm having affairs, had his wife having affairs. This is irresponsible. And I can show you many different things that show this cannot be true. But that was the heart of what he did. And one day when I get a chance to go into that book more extensively, I'm going to talk about why he did what he did, because there's a reason why he did that. But I wrote a piece on Facebook. I hope people will read it. It is, I think, the most profound analysis on what happened to Malcolm that's ever been written. And none of the things that have been written about it before, based on what my analysis was, can be anything other than fiction. The real story is on my Facebook wall. Hope you'll read it. Well, we got to get out of here as usual. We run over time. Don't want to do that. Want you to follow the programs here on flinttalkradio.com. And don't forget to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.